Welcome back. This is Social Watch, and today we're discussing child abuse, the cost of it on the individual and even to society. We have a backstory. Let's take a watch. We'll be back.
Abuse of children comes in various forms and shapes. While some have visible scars as proof, others live a daily struggle of emotional and psychological consequences of what they've been exposed to. Whereas Ghana has one of the strongest economies in Africa, a growing body of literature shows that violence and abuse of children, including sexual abuse, remains very high. According to the United Nations Children's Fund, 3.4 million children in Ghana are subjected to some form of abuse. Data from the Ghana Statistical Service indicates more than 90% of children in Ghana report having experienced physical violence, both at home and in the school environment. Physical and sexual abuse is of a particular concern. The number of cases officially reported to the Domestic Violence and Victim Support Unit, DOVSU, of the Ghana Police Service are worrying. This week on Social Watch, we zoom in our lenses on these abusers, the likes of Jewell King, who as a child constantly witnessed his father physically abuse his mother, and the many others who rather endure it physically. The implications, the cost of child abuse, on the individual and the larger society, the strategy to curb the phenomenon and the social support systems. Join us, let's explore the 5 W's and an H on the subject. This is Social Watch.
Welcome back. Quite recently, you must have heard or you've seen in the news a 3-year-old child who was abused by the father in Kumasi, and another child whose ear was cut off by the father, and that child even went as far as saying that he wanted his father to be arrested forever. Now, apart from the physical consequences of abuse, there are other consequences. Let's explore the risk factors. But first of all, I'm joined by Gregory Derry, and he's a child protection manager at World Vision Ghana. And one of my favorite person, Stethmau Siasafo, he's a lecturer and a clinical psychologist who'll be helping me have the conversation. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to the people who gather the data, the people who do extensive research, and then give us the overview on the situation like in Ghana.
Thank you very much. Child abuse is quite a heavy issue in Ghana.
Okay.
And particularly during this period of COVID, we are receiving a lot of reports of children being abused. And this could be because of the engagement between parents and the children at this particular time of the pandemic, that parents are spending more time with their children, unlike where children were in school, spending 8 hours. Okay, but the issue of child abuse stems from several factors.
Right.
We are aware that some parents might have been brought up in violent environments, and they think that the best way to bring up their children is also to take them through the same path. So the least provocation, they are beating them, they are subjecting them to
speak up a little.
various forms of corporal punishments. They are even trafficking, okay, and exploiting the children in various forms. So we think that that is one factor. The issue of poverty also comes in, where parents are not able to meet the needs of the family. You know, they say a hungry man is an angry man. So they try to divert that energy into abusing children in various forms. And let me say that they even give out girls out for marriage as a way of settling part of family issues. So many things are coming up. You have children who are also being given out for trafficking,
Right.
especially when we look at the information coming from the OT areas. Because of the leak, a lot of parents are giving out their children to work in order to earn extra income for the family. But it's so pathetic. We are seeing reports also of parents who are molesting their children, either because the child has picked a piece of meat or have done something very little. They subject the child to such hideous punishment sometimes somebody will say, I can't think for whether they are also human.
Yeah.
But this is a country that we are largely religious. Christians and Muslims, we practice forgiveness too. Why is it that parents are not able to forgive their children?
We would even come to the why. I'm going to go to Doctor. You want to help me. At what point would I describe this as child abuse? If I saw a child that is abused and you want to help me with the types, I hear the types of it. You want to educate me on that?
So basically, there are about 4 different big facets of it, which has subdivisions. And what most of us observe or see is the physical abuse, which is what most of us can see, basically. And there are other ones which actually cause more significant harm. And you see, I always have likened child abuse to one of those scenarios where the conventional saying, time heals all wounds, doesn't apply. Because in child abuse, actually, they get worse off as they grow because they have to deal with this emotional baggage on and on. Now, there's also sexual abuse, there's psychological abuse, and then there's neglect. And basically, these are things that we might not see on the surface. And so that's why a lot of the times people might undermine what this is, but they actually do have very significant effects. Now, physical abuse everybody knows about. And we normally can tell physical abuse when we have kids who are having injuries which cannot be explained. You know, if a child has a fracture to like their color, and then they say they slipped, it doesn't match. So the explanation for it doesn't match. Yes, when we were kids, we all used to have bruises on our legs because we're playing football. So that's understandable.
Yes.
But when you have broken ribs, you have scars to necks and backs, and you explain it as an accident, or that doesn't really make sense. Now, if, for example, you're trying to teach your child a lesson by punishing them, punishment is not to kill them.
Right.
Punishment is to direct them to do things that are okay. So if you ask me if I'm an advocate of corporal punishment, no. But I know it is part of our culture. And whatever punishment you're given must be proportional to whatever the act is.
Okay.
I never accept the fact that a child breaks a glass and is beaten. It's almost like saying you've never been a child before.
Right.
You were a child. No child gets up to intentionally break a glass or a plate. These are perhaps accidental. So if you're beating somebody up because of that, I consider it as a child abuse.
Okay. I mean, today we'd like to focus our conversation around the emotional and the psychological effect, and even the risk factors,
Great.
and the type of adults or persons we're raising, the effect on the individual and even on society. Now, I'd like to find out what would make somebody be an abuser.
Okay, so I mean,
I like the literature and the theories behind it.
So basically, from a learning perspective, we say that human beings learn both consciously and unconsciously, okay? Now, what you're used to becomes what is right in your mind. I'm using the word right reservedly, okay? Now, if you lived in an environment where abuse was sort of not frowned upon, or you lived in an environment where all you could see was abuse going around, in your mind, that is the norm. And because you don't have any other skill, you also might follow through on it. There's another level of how abuse can cause significant effects within an individual, for them to perhaps develop subliminally some form of psychological pathologies.
Right.
So in that space of not being psychologically sound, they could also become an abuser. So I normally will lean into these two, that something that you've learned or that you have become, it's something that you've learned one, or you become used to that pandemic, or you're trying to cope. So one way people cope with being abused is use of drugs and alcohol, which of course can impair your judgment. So imagine that mother or that father who's constantly abusing your child because they're intoxicated in a certain way. It's basically they trying to cope with some life challenge or some life stressor. In the same light, their judgment is impaired. So when they are beating out their child or whatever it is not as if they are well aware of it.
Okay, I'll still come back to you. I'll come to World Vision, but I'll come back to you because the types of abuse that does not factually happen to the child, but things that happen around maybe a mother being abused, a brother, or situations. We'll come back to measure the impact of that one as well. But World Vision, I like to think that you've done a few projects with social welfare and all of that. Would you say that we're seeing high numbers in this situation because social welfare probably is not properly equipped? What's your history with social welfare? Can you share with me?
Yes, so World Vision does a lot of work broadly with the Ministry of Gender.
Okay.
And at the district levels with the Department of Social Welfare
Right.
and Community Development. For me, social welfare, let me put it this way, the ministry is not very well resourced.
Okay.
And this affects how much also goes to the social welfare department. Because growing up, I knew the Department of Social Welfare was very strong, but dynamics have changed. Population has grown, okay? We now have more districts, more regions, and still the numbers of, in terms of manpower, has not changed so much. So you don't find social welfare in the communities as much as they used to do. And a lot of child abuse issues, we need to work on the preventive aspects. How do we get parents, psych parents to change their mindset, to change behavior, social behavior change, so that they could begin to see the positives and how to deal with children in ways that do not actually harm or inflict pain. There's a lot of work. Currently, we do a lot of work on that, on the social drive with social welfare and other partners. But like I'm saying, due to inadequate resources, and we think that government should be providing more resources, especially at this time of COVID, where we are seeing rising numbers of children being abused.
Okay.
We need these institutions to work so that people are able to report, are able to refer for them to take quick actions.
Okay. Now, we'll come back to our conversation. However, we have a practical example. On the 8th of May, we did a special Mother's Day edition here on Prime Morning, and we're joined by a young lad, very vibrant, very creative, who shared a near story as his talent. Now, I wondered whether it was just creativity or he was just throwing a pity party for us to co-host, or it was a real story. Now, let's watch this to know if it's a real story or not.
I recognize them after I'm done marking them. See, I'll mark them to the extent that they won't feel good wearing the night shoes because they will know they are wrong and not right, and that mark on the night shoes doesn't fit their body and foot. Yes, it serves you right. I'll just do it. I'll just give you a mark that reminds you of the dread I had on your life, like the apostrophe sign reminds us of Judas hanging on a tree after betraying me. You just try touching my mama, because my mama loves me to the moon and back. She's more like an astronaut, created space in her womb for me. And on the 9th month, I began to rock Earth. She's patient, obedient, and she went through all the trials just to set me free, just to let me be. And on this Mother's Day, say, Mommy, I love you. Happy Mother's Day to every mother out there struggling just so that their children can have a brighter future. Happy Mother's Day.
That's right. Wow. Jewell, so you're so emotional.
Yeah.
Tell me, is this just a creative piece or this is real, like you said?
It's real.
Wow. And how old are you?
My age?
Yes, how old are you?
26.
So how long were you experiencing this?
For like 7 years till my pops left.
Okay, he left or what do you mean by he left?
Like till now, we don't know of his whereabouts.
I see.
Yeah.
So is this what inspires you as a poet?
Yeah, as an artist, as a poet, my struggles and everything, I don't let it infest me so that I put anger out there. So every time I put it in my poems, and I recite it with passion, I say it like I mean it.
But how is mom? Is she fine seeing you that you're doing better? No?
Yeah, my mom is fine.
Okay, that's right. So Jewell is joined me here in the studio. I'm just going to have a quick conversation with him, and then we'll talk to the psychologist to measure the level of impact, if there is any. Hi, Jewell. How are you?
I'm good.
So I remember that you said you're 27.
Yeah.
And tell me about your upbringing. Where did you live? In Accra with both parents, everything?
Yeah, I did. Around Asofan, I don't know if you...
I've heard, yes.
Yeah, behind of Uncle.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where we used to live.
Okay. And your dad and mother were married?
Yeah.
You lived there with your siblings?
Yeah.
For how long?
For, I can't tell, but
Okay.
let's say
So how did you become an artist?
That's a long story, but then I was inspired by a teacher.
Okay.
So I began to write. So it was when I got to Care University. They did a program called Chaskili. Then that was my first platform, and I began to recite. So I just realized, like, you can put messages in your poetry and share it out there. So I took it serious, not just a talent. Yeah, that's how I began to.
Where's your mother?
She's at Kufuridia right now.
What does she do?
She doesn't work because she's not healthy that much. Yeah.
What do you mean by she's not healthy?
She has some health issues.
Okay, then you know the cause of this?
Yeah, I think it's all from the past, from the way the home was. So she developed some problems, but she's kicking.
What exactly is your state of mind? What is the problem with your mother, your father, and yourself? Is there any problem?
Like with us?
Yes.
Well, I don't think there is a problem.
Okay.
But I mostly think, okay, growing up from the setting and the piece I wrote, growing up, it's like anytime you do wrong, there should be a punishment.
Okay.
And my mom was an example to that. So anytime she goes wrong, there is. So with that being said, it developed this notion
Every
of,
time your mother did something wrong,
Yeah.
she was punished.
Yeah.
By who?
by dad.
What kind of wrong is this, and what kind of punishment is this?
Mostly it's just an argument.
Okay.
You get it? It starts with an argument.
Okay.
And you realize they go up with exchanging words, then a blow follows.
Okay.
Yeah. And because of that, it was difficult for me to answer questions in class because I think when I go wrong, I'll be beaten. So even when I know the answer, I wouldn't say it. I'll just keep mute till someone says it. Then I'm like, oh,
I knew that.
I knew that. Yeah, so.
Take me back to the house again. At the time that your parents would be exchanging words and then it led to physical blows,
Yeah.
where were you and your siblings? Did you try to stop the fight? What exactly was happening to you and your brother or your siblings?
Okay, so we're in our various rooms. Sometimes we come together just to listen or watch.
Okay.
And I don't. Even when we try to stop, we can't stop him. He's much muscular than us. Like we just can't. And I think we should be educated too on how to stop these things, because just moving out of the house and let's say reporting to a policeman or someone that can come to stop it wouldn't be a problem or anything. But we were just so timid. And we will hide in one corner, sometimes cry over it.
Okay.
And when it's over, everything comes back to normal.
Are they still together as a husband and wife?
Yes and no, because Dad just flew away. He just fled. We don't know of his whereabouts. So like, divorce-wise on paper, I don't think it's done.
Okay.
But let's say because of distance, and we've not seen him for about, is it 12? Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
They are not together too.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
What's your mother been saying about everything that's happened?
My mom has a very big heart, and you see, mostly I used to think what Dad was doing was right. So I grew up. Then I had this rewiring of mind, as in, why should someone be beaten if they go wrong? Like, can't correction be in a different way either than capital? Then I began to realize it was wrong, as in, she's a lady.
Okay.
And I think ladies are different in a kind of way. And if you are the husband, you need to understand certain things and know how to go about stuff. So it was there I began to know it was wrong.
Okay.
You get it? So my problem with my dad right now is that he was totally wrong. He had no right to hit mom. And I don't think mom never said anything bad about him. She's always like, we should pray for him to change.
So if your mother said you should be praying for your father for him to change, did your father exhibit any signs of whether he had challenges? Was he ill? What was he always drunk? What was pushing him to do these things?
That's somehow a funny question. My dad is a pastor, though. I said it in a poem.
Oh, yes. Your father is a pastor.
Yeah.
So it happens, and then he would go to church to lead the congregation.
Exactly.
Or did some of your church members know?
Yeah, I'm sure some knew, and it's not something that was hidden.
Okay.
They can fight to the extent that those in the area will come around and see that. And you see why I'm like, we should be educated. People are so ignorant. They come around, they won't call anyone. They are there, they just separate, and they know the next time they will fight again.
If your dad walked into the studio right now, what would be your first reaction?
If he came around here.
Now, if he opened this door, yes, and walked in here.
I'll tell him to apologize to my mom. Yeah, and also get to know what he did was wrong, because maybe to me, picking it up, I'm like, everything, anytime someone goes wrong, I should beat them. Because that's the right way to correct.
Have you tried it before? Have you tried beating somebody before?
Myself. So in the home, because we reflected on what they did, we used to fight mostly within ourselves, like the 4 of us, 3 boys and a girl.
Okay.
And anytime we fight, I'm being beaten for that because I'm the eldest. And so that's why I said there was a conflict. Like growing up, I'm like, why should I be beaten for beating my children? But dad does that and gets away.
Okay, I'll come back to you. So, Gregory, I know that you've told us the background of what's happening in Ghana, some of the causes, poverty, culture, people lived with it, with their parents, and they learned from it. This is just the data. This is a pure case study. Doc, would you say that there's some sort of psychological problem here? Can we establish it, or you need to?
In what sense? Psychological? In what sense? I'm confused with the question.
Is he okay? Do you think he's Is there any problem? Is there a problem
with him?
Yes.
No, I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
What I can say, however, is the fact that he's probably employed what we call a defense mechanism. Okay, defense mechanisms are things that we do to rid ourselves of anxiety. Okay, and so what he's done is to channel all the negative feelings into poetry, which has become a positive thing for him. And this is what we call sublimation. You transform that particular negative feeling to become something that's positive or worthwhile. It's the same thing that happens when, for example, someone gets angry, really angry at home, and channels the energy to start scrubbing. And they'll scrub the whole house. It's a defense mechanism. So it prevents you from experiencing the anxiety, because that rage is something you use to do something positive. So I must say, that's what I see.
Okay, earlier you mentioned that some of the risk factors would be that he's channeled his into poetry. Some people would tend to use alcohol, drugs and all that. Would you say that this is a clear case that would push a child to go into?
You see, interestingly, it's not to say that automatically it will happen, but majority of people do so, because this is what happens. You see, as children, we are very confused about a lot of things, and we look out to those who are ahead of us to give us information or knowledge regarding different things, okay? Now, when you're in a family where your primary caregivers, your mom, your dad, or people you trust, are not giving you that nurturance that you require, what you do is now to go outside. So working with children, one thing I noticed that a lot of kids who have gone to try something which is against the norm actually got that advice or knowledge from another friend.
Okay.
So if the people who care about you the most, I'm assuming, to be your primary family, will not give you that information, you have to find it from somewhere else.
Okay.
And somebody may be coping using alcohol. So you say, oh, we'll try alcohol. And you'll try, and then suddenly you get hooked onto it. Because yes, it does give you a temporary relief, but the problem comes back again.
Okay. Gregory, so World Vision, for a situation like this, I mean, his is not, the end result of his is not entirely bad. But we could have gotten somebody else whose end result probably would have been bad than this. What's the first point of call for a situation like this? If a child is growing up and sees this, what should they do?
Okay, so based on the work we do, we establish what we call community child protection committees who are trained. They become the first point of reporting or making a referral to at the community level. Okay, so for instance, in his case, he might not have the knowledge or even access to service providers, to the Department of Social Welfare or to the police. But he knows that there is an assemblyman, there is a pastor, or there is a chief in the community who works on student issues that he could easily relay the information on. But it also depends on his level of empowerment, his level of resilience.
Okay.
What will motivate him to know that, oh, I can report this issue to DOC?
Okay.
And like he said, we do work with a lot of children groups. We give them training in what we call positive discipline. We also do what we call Peace Road, which focuses on the adolescent development.
Okay.
Okay, how do we ensure that children are able to cope when there are stress? Children are able to survive and also make reports. So these are mechanisms, but on a nutshell, it is the reporting and referral mechanisms from the community level to the district level. Okay, so if you make a report to somebody in the community, is the person able to relay the issue to the higher authority in the district? Okay, for instance, if the case was an issue of sexual nature, which is criminal, we wouldn't expect that that should be handled at the community level.
Okay.
It should quickly be relayed to the police or DOFSU, who handle criminal issues. But here is an issue that has to do with maybe beating or some form of corporal punishment.
Okay.
Could there be a counselor in the community to talk to the parents? Could there be somebody who also sit with the child to also, like doctor said, to try to understand his situation and also put him on the right track so that we don't have that tension in the family that perpetuates the violence that is happening to
Doc,
the
let's
child.
measure the reality, results reality, because the child may not even know the role of a chief in his community, a counselor in his community. Let's come back to the role of society, what we can do. Now, a child who is growing, who is nearly psychologically abused, that doesn't have bruises, what shall I look out for a child to know that there's something happening? If I don't live near to their house, how would I know?
Excellent. So I would say that it takes a nation. In the sense that we know that children don't live in isolation. They'll go to school at some point or go to church. So there are other people within that child's ecosystem that may be able to pick out things. Now, a lot of the times I have said it becomes very problematic when you're doing a checkbox approach, where you're looking for, okay, per the literature, this is not there, so it is fine. So let's not get lulled by the fact that our kids don't have any of these things. One very important thing that you can get from kids very quickly is that if there's any sudden change in behavior, you should start to worry what is going on. And most kids are not able to communicate what they truly feel. If they're going through some form of stress, it's difficult to actually communicate. And so if you don't, for example, create that avenue where you talk to your children to get them to talk back, it becomes difficult for them to share this, especially when they are blaming themselves half the time for what kind of abuse they are going through. Especially with sexual abuse, they tend to feel like it's their fault. It's something they have done, or they feel like when I say it, they won't believe me. Parents out there, it's very important. Each time your child says something about anything that has to do with being abused, do not dismiss it. Don't say it's not true. Don't say it's not a big deal. Even if you don't think you'll act on it, accept what they are saying, acknowledge it, and make them feel like, oh, okay, there's somebody who actually listens. Rather than, don't worry about it. But I can understand that sometimes parents are not ready to deal with the reality of what their child is going through. So they are in a denial.
Yeah.
And kids can be manipulative, no doubt. But once you start doing that, a child learns that this is not the avenue. See, children learn to trust the world from day one, okay? So when a child cries, they expect that they'll be picked up. When they cry, they expect that I'm giving breast milk. They cry. They have different cries for different things, and mothers are exceptional at noticing what cry is for what.
Yeah.
Okay, now each time you meet a child's need, they develop a sense of trust for the world.
Okay.
So they start to trust, oh, okay, so my needs will be taken care of and all of that. And it helps to develop their psychological and emotional health.
Right.
On the other hand, when a child cries, you ignore them. When a child, I mean, you seem to be unperturbed. They develop a sense of distrust for the world. And it follows them way into adulthood and the way they relate with other people and things like that. There are a number of pickup signs that we look for in terms of any kind of abuse. So, for example, bruises are the ones that you can physically see.
Okay.
But if you ever notice that a child is trying to stay away from a particular adult, or you want them to go and be with your brother, and they say, I don't want to, please don't push them. Something could be going on. If a child is in school or church is over, they don't want to go home. That could be a sign. There's something happening in a particular environment that I don't like. I've had instances where I hear something like, my child at home is very well, but goes to school and is disruptive. There could be issues. And in one instance, we found that there was a teacher who was actually sexually abusing a child.
Right.
But the child couldn't communicate it. So these are some things that you can pick up. When you notice their grades have suddenly dipped, or they're in class and they become extra aggressive than usual. So before they were this really calm and sweet child, and now they're fighting, they're talking back. It's a cry for help. Let's stop beating children because we say they are stubborn. And you see, interestingly, if you look at the developmental stages of children, children try to develop their own autonomy at a point. So we have what we call the terrible twos. So around 2 years, a child, for example, is holding a bottle of powder or baby oil over your new laptop. And you shout, no, no. They look at you, look at the bottle, look at you again.
And do it more.
And do it more.
Okay.
It's not because they are stubborn. It's because they are trying to develop a sense of autonomy.
Okay.
So you punishing them there is just inheriting that spirit, that skill of being autonomous in the sense. So depending on the stage, the developmental stage where abuse occurs, so many things can happen.
Right. I'd go to World Vision. I'll come back to you to ask how we got here. Do you think that culture has played a major role? And we'll compare the situation now and then. Let's see. But World Vision, have you come across let's talk about even policies, right? Now, these people were, okay, we're going to go to the social welfare department. This question would be good to talk to them. We'll be talking to Enyo Anaglate. His name is Samuel Enyo Anaglate. He's the head of foster care service department at the social welfare via Zoom, if it's ready. Hello?
Hello?
Hello, Mr. Anaglate.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm okay. Thank you for joining us this morning. Now, we've been talking about child abuse, the cost of it on the individual and even the society. Now, as social welfare department, can you give me how the situation is like for you now, currently in Ghana?
Okay. Child abuse in Ghana, even though we are trying to do our best to minimize it, every now and then you hear from the papers, on telly, sometimes in social media, where children have been abused with leaving marks on them, sometimes even leading to their death. So child abuse is still going on in Ghana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Naglate, so the situation where if a child does something abusive, the consequences is quite clear, where at the end result is juvenile. But when a child is abused, it seems that the punishment for the abuser is determined so by the sitting or the presiding judge. It means that there's no time frame. So we are able to measure the level of punishment that we give to these abusers. Are you struggling for social welfare? Are you struggling with this situation? Are your structures okay enough to fight this?
All right. If I get you right, are you talking about the juvenile courts?
So a child, the consequences of a child doing something wrong is quite clear. The end result is mostly juvenile, so that they corrected, corrective units. But if an adult or an abuser is an adult, I'd say that the time frame for punishment is really not measured. This is just to say that, are you equipped with enough policies to fight it?
Yes, we have quite a lot of policies to fight child abuse. So let's say, so let me mention some of them. We know the discussion. I've quite some of them.
Hello?
Were mentioned.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, sorry, I lost you a bit. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. So I've been following the discussion, and I've heard some of the abuses mentioned.
Okay.
And let me just run through some of them quickly so that I can talk about the policies and the programs that we have to keep some of them. So, for instance, if a child is married to an adult below a certain age, it's a form of abuse to the child.
Okay.
And then we also know if a parent neglects and does not take care of a child that is neglected, and it's also a form of abuse. We also have physical punishment and all that. So when you come to the Ministry of Gender, Children and Children Social Protection and which social welfare is part of, we have a lot of programs and policies. Somewhere, I think in 2018, there was a policy called Child and Family Welfare Policy, and the aim of that policy is to set up structures in the communities to take care of abuse of children.
Okay.
And that is to put the power in the hands of community leaders, because almost all these abuses happen in communities. Okay. So we have queen mothers, opinion leaders, chiefs in the community that have been given some power to, as it were, if a child is abused, there are certain things they do. The queen mother can summon whoever abused the child into a palace, and then certain actions are taken with the help of the social welfare officer, and most of the time the police. So, and we also have anti-human trafficking unit at the ministry, which also seeks to prevent children's use on our lakes and in our farms instead of them going to school. We also can talk about even LEAP. Sometimes some of the causes of these abuses is poverty. So the LEAP program seeks to take care of some of these issues where monies are given to support families, poor households, to empower them so that they will be on their feet to be able to take care of children. When you go to the communities, we have something we call casework, where social workers sit on cases as you witness in courts. So whenever a family is having challenges, which most of the time children are the ones that let me say like the boy in the studio, where when the parents fight, they suffer. So when you go to communities where families, let's say the man and the wife have issues, a lot of time the children suffer at the end of the day. So most of these cases are reported in our communities, because in every district in Ghana, you will find a social welfare office, and so there are social welfare officers who sit on such cases, and some of which are referred to the court. And then talking about the court system, the juvenile courts, when a child commits an offense, and we do not use an offense in that matter, we will say a child is in conflict with the law, because we think that children that commit such offenses do so because of some factors that existed. So, for instance, the parents were not responsible, so the child will go out against somebody's something. So when it happens like that, the case goes to court. On the juvenile court panel, there are 3 members, of which a social worker is one. And before the judge takes a decision to let me say, sentence the child. Maybe for want of a better word, let me use sentence, or let me say convict the child. Okay, there are social workers they are probation officers who are social workers. They go into the communities to find out exactly what made the child to commit such offenses, because there are always underlying factors. That is why you hear two children committing the same offense, and one will be allowed to go home, whilst the other will be sent to a correctional home.
Mr. Nagla,
And
to say,
mind you, this correction,
yes. So you've given me a lot of some impressive policies or things or structures that you've put in place as social welfare. However, there's still high increase in child abuse. All right. So where
Yes.
and how are we failing? What is your challenge?
To me, I think there still needs to be a lot of advocacy programs on preventing child abuse. And then, because a lot of people who do such things don't really know the impact and then the effects. We will set up the policies, we will punish those that have done it. But if the people out there don't know that there's something that exists like this. But there was a case that I personally worked on where somebody seriously abused the child, and then we decided to take this person on. The person was saying, let me speak to you. He was saying, like in English, like this is my own child, and the child has committed, has done something wrong, and I've beaten the child. What do you have to tell me? It is possibly because the person that is speaking have gone through similar
Abuse. Okay.
forms of abuses himself, and that is what that person know. And then they also don't know that doing a thing like that to the child, it's wrong. Okay, and some people also who live with some of these abuses, which they could have reported to the sport, take up the issue and then see where the solutions can be found.
Okay, my final
They
question.
don't know. So I think
My final question to you would be that we're here now. Where is the first point of call if a child feels that he or she's been abused? Or if somebody even identifies it, where should I go?
you can report to the police. You can also
That's my
report to the
first
social
point.
Yes.
Okay.
To either the police or the social welfare, the closest. Because our laws say that whenever there is a case of abuse, the social worker accompanied by the police officer goes to investigate. So it also gives some roles to the police as well to perform with regards to these issues.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Naglate. Do have a good day.
You have a good day too.
Okay, I have so many questions, I don't want to say that you're a victim, but you're a person of your own. You're a researcher, you're an NGO, you've done a lot of advocacy. Yeah. You're a psychologist. We're all citizens. Are you impressed with what social welfare does? Do you think we can do better?
I mean, listening to what he just said, it's impressive that they actually have these structures. So perhaps, like we've noticed in our part of the world, lots of things that are under-resourced. Okay. We know that there are policies that are on paper, but as to whether they are implemented, I don't know. I can't just say for them.
Right.
So I think they need more resourcing and more empowerment so that they can do these, because the policies seem to be very impressive.
But I wouldn't know about it if I don't make a conscious effort to read.
So exactly.
If I didn't get him to talk about it on TV today. So half of the people in this country, they don't know what to do and where to turn. However, let me just take a part of what he said, that a father saying that, how do you draw the line, right? How do you draw the line in correcting your child, trying to raise or straighten up your child and being abusive? And even in schools.
Yes. So you see, from the beginning, I said punishment is not supposed to cause pain, but it's supposed to modify behavior. Okay. So there are some prerequisites for actually implementing a punishment. Okay. One is that you implement punishment right after the negative act, so that an association is formed psychologically. So, when you're training dogs, like a dog poos in the living room, you pull the dog there, you probably let them smell it, then you take them out. They learn. This is what I don't want, okay? But, so if you delay the punishment, it loses its association, which means that you haven't done anything. Secondly, when you punish, you must point the good behavior out, which is another prerequisite.
Okay.
So I've punished you because I'm telling you this is what you did. You should have done this. So you offer the positive alternative. Now, if you're not doing any of these things, then the beating really is considered by whoever you are punishing as an act of wickedness.
Okay.
Or something you're doing for your pleasure.
Okay.
And if you're beating me up because I spilled food on the ground, that doesn't make sense. Because you've done it before.
Okay.
And I've always said this, that kids have never been adults before. But we've been kids before. And we can't say we never broke a glass.
Definitely.
We never say we didn't break a plate or we forgot to do some chore that our parents had asked us to do.
Okay.
So it becomes hypocritical in a way to actually offer such unnecessary punishment.
Right.
So we should look for other forms of punishment apart from just...
I was going to ask you, what do you think about caning in school? But which is a big topic that we'll put on the table. But World Vision, the country depends so much on NGOs like you, advocacy companies like institutions like you. But can you just remind us what you're doing? Maybe somebody will pick up where they can turn to if there's a challenge again.
Yeah, so let me begin by saying that with the type of work we do, I want to look at it from the community and the state. Okay. From the community, we want to focus on social behavior change.
Okay.
Because a lot of these child abuse issues stems from how people perceive, how people have been groomed, the kind of environment in which they live. So it's most likely that if you are from a community that is very violent, you are likely to behave in same. So we are looking at reaching out, empowering communities with information that will enable them live positively so that children are not abused. When we come to the aspect of the state, yes, we have the policies. The assemblies are responsible for child protection.
Okay.
How much resources do they make available to ensure that children in the district are protected? The Department of Social Welfare, yes, at the national level, but at the district level, they belong to the district assembly. Okay, are the staff having the right tools? Are they the right caliber of persons to be there? Because we know the districts are picking people who do not even have social welfare background and putting them there to do what? You know, some of them, I would say, are messing up the work.
This is right.
Because you need the profession, you need to be a professional to be able to handle children, to be able to talk to grown-ups, to see how we can solve these issues.
Okay. Look, Jewell, so you do still stand by your word that if your father walked in here, it's just an apology you demand. What if he never shows up in your entire life, your existence on this earth? How would you deal with that? Does it mean that you haven't forgiven him?
Yeah, I would say he shouldn't do whatever, he shouldn't repeat whatever he did.
I don't think he's going to marry again to want to be beating his wife, but I'm talking about you. Would you forgive him?
Of course, like he brought me to the world, and like my senior one said, sometimes it's as a result of how they were brought up, so they tend to continue their practice with the family they raise up because they think that's the way of correction, and mostly pulls up the scripture, spare the rod, spoil the child. So then the child needs to be beaten for whatever wrong. But then like he said again, we have different forms of punishments, like a way to correct a child. And when a child breaks a glass, you don't need to...
Quickly, what would you say to a child watching you?
I'll say they should be smart. And they should know how to react to these things and not conform to the abuse all the time, because it ends up like destroying them than the one causing them the pain.
All right. Thank you so much, Doug. I had so much to talk about, but sadly my time, I've run out of time. We'll go for a break, and when we come back, there's more.